Today we're tackling a really big question, quite a complex one. The future of zoos.
Yeah,
You shared some really interesting material that makes you question if zoos as we know them should even exist.
absolute.
So we're going to dig into the arguments, for and against, and really try to unpack the core issues here.
And what's really striking, I think, from the sources is just how deep the ethical questions go, and the practical ones, too. It's
Right.
not just about kind of how we feel about animals. It's about the science of their needs and, well, our role in conservation.
Okay, so let's start with maybe the strongest argument for banning zoos, the animal welfare side.
Yeah.
Your sources really hit hard on this idea that maybe keeping wild animals captive is,
It's just inherently cruel.
well, yeah, and there's growing evidence suggesting that even these big fancy enclosures,
Yeah.
they often just don't cut it.
Don't cut it out. They just can't provide the complexity, the chances for natural behavior that these animals need.
Yeah.
Think about species that roam huge distances, or have complex social lives.
Right.
You can't really replicate that in a zoo. It's often impossible.
And this isn't just like a feeling, is it? The sources brought up zoochosis, those repetitive kind of worrying behaviors.
Exactly. Zootosis.
Can you paint a picture of that? What does it actually look like?
Well, it shows up in different ways. You see big cats pacing back and forth constantly. Birds might pluck out their own feathers, sometimes even self-harm, like chewing on bars.
Wow.
And the key thing is you rarely, if ever, see the stuff in the wild.
So it points directly to the environment.
It strongly suggests a link, yeah, between being cooped up and, frankly, serious psychological distress.
That makes you think, especially when, the material also points out that a lot of zoo animals are actually bred in the zoo.
Mm-hmm.
Not rescued, but bred. Often, it seems, just for display.
That's a really critical point. I mean, yes, there are important breeding programs for conservation. We'll get to that.
Okay.
But a lot of births in zoos, they seem driven by needing, cute baby animals or popular species for the visitors.
So it raises that question.
Hmm.
Are we putting human entertainment first, ahead of the animal's actual well-being, especially if they'll never ever see the wild?
Precisely. It's a tough ethical question.
But then, flipping the coin, the material you shared also made a pretty strong case against just banning all zoos,
Right.
highlighting the conservation role some of them play. The Amur leopard was mentioned,
Hmm.
and the black-footed ferret.
Yeah, and those are really powerful examples. They show how specific, targeted breeding programs, when they're linked up with efforts to protect habitats,
Uh-huh.
they can genuinely help save species on the brink. The Amur leopard, I mean, its wild population was incredibly low. Zoo programs were and are a lifeline.
And the ferret.
Same story, pretty much. Its recovery is like a direct result of captive breeding and then reintroducing them.
Hmm. So if you just got rid of all zoos?
You could be removing a vital tool, yeah. For these really fragile populations, it could actually be devastating.
So it's this tension, isn't it, between the welfare of the animals in the zoo and the potential for zoos to help the species survive out there in the wild.
It's a very difficult balance, absolutely.
And there was another point for zoos in the material, too, the educational side.
Mm-hmm. The idea that for a lot of people, especially kids in cities, a zoo might be their first, maybe their only, real contact with wildlife.
I mean, I can see that. I remember going to the zoo as a kid, seeing an elephant, a tiger. It definitely sparked something, an interest.
Exactly. And the argument is that seeing these animals firsthand, maybe it builds empathy, raises awareness about conservation, perhaps inspires kids to care, or even go into science.
But does it have to be seeing them in captivity?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
Especially now with amazing documentaries and VR and everything. Can those digital experiences create the same connection, the same sense of wonder? The sources definitely raise that point.
Which kind of leads us towards alternatives, doesn't it? Like, the idea of animal sanctuaries came up.
Yes.
How are they different from a typical zoo?
Well, sanctuaries usually put animal welfare front and center. That's their main mission.
Okay.
So they generally don't breed animals just for display. Their goal is more about giving the best possible, most natural life to animals that maybe they were rescued, maybe they just can't survive in the wild anymore.
Right, rescue and rehab focused.
Often, yes. But as the material pointed out, they're usually not as open to the public, not as accessible as zoos are.
Ah, so we're back to that education and public access point again.
Exactly. It forces us to weigh things up.
Hmm?
Does the wider public engagement you get with zoos justify the potential compromises to animal welfare inside them?
Or could we use technology better? Like those documentaries you mentioned. Could that be enough to inspire people without needing the physical zoo?
The sources certainly suggest exploring that. Can tech bridge that gap?
It feels like the conversation is shifting maybe towards reform rather than just abolition.
Yeah.
Like, could we change zoos? Reimagine what they are.
The material definitely points that way. This idea of turning zoos into proper conservation centers, really strict welfare
How
standards.
would that look?
Well, maybe stop breeding animals just for show. Focus only on crucial conservation programs, and really provide amazing tailored environments for the animals that genuinely can't survive in the wild.
So the focus shifts completely.
To welfare and genuine conservation, yeah. Not entertainment.
And let's be practical too. If we just shut down all zoos tomorrow,
Yeah.
what happens to all the animals currently in them? The sources touched on this.
And it's a huge, often overlooked problem. A lot of these animals, especially those born in zoos for generations, they just don't have the skills to survive in the wild.
They wouldn't know how to hunt or avoid predators.
Exactly. Or even just, interact properly with their own kind in a wild setting, and just releasing them, it could actually harm wild populations, mess up ecosystems.
So there's a responsibility there.
A huge one. Any talk about closing zoos has to seriously figure out what happens to the millions of animals currently under human care. It's not simple.
So pulling all these threads together,
Yeah.
it really isn't a black and white issue, is it? Zoos.
Not at all. It's incredibly complex. You've got very real, very serious ethical worries about animal welfare. But you also have this potential, in some cases, for real conservation wins and maybe that educational spark.
It seems like some zoos might be causing harm, while others, maybe they're doing some good or trying to.
That seems to be the picture emerging. It really demands that we, think critically, weigh up the different values, and be ready to change how we think as we learn more about animal welfare and our impact.
The conversation definitely isn't finished.
No, in many ways, it feels like it's just getting started properly.
Absolutely. And maybe on that note, here's something to kind of chew on. Thinking about how fast technology is moving and how much more we're understanding about animal minds and needs,
Yeah.
what could or maybe should human interaction with wildlife look like in the future? Ethically, effectively. And what part, if any, should actual physical places like zoos or sanctuaries or something else entirely play in that relationship?
Right.
And in fostering our responsibility to all the other species we share the planet with, it's a much bigger question than just zoos, really.
Yeah.